Well, second service, how we doing? Fantastic, good to be with you. I haven't been up here since Christmas Eve, so it's kind of my Happy New Year's. So yeah, it's cool. A few things I do want to kind of mention. Some of it's personal, some of it's kind of church family stuff. So on the personal side, about a year ago, Katie and I kind of started this journey of finding a new place to live, and we get the keys to our new house on Wednesday. So yeah, it has been the slowest. So you sign all the documents, title company, all that stuff. They take all your money. We did that Friday, and so since Friday, every day has felt like an eternity for me, and so we cannot wait. So Wednesday's coming. This next thing I feel like I need to say is probably going to divide the room a little bit, but I say go Cowboys. I hate the 49ers. So just thought I would throw that out there. And then something that we can all sort of celebrate together. If you were around in December, we kind of did this thing. We're calling it Project Christmas. And we had a goal, financial goal, that we wanted to raise in the month of December, $275,000. And that's like a big number. And I actually said behind the scenes, just so you know, that I was the person of little faith. I was like, that feels like a lot. We've got gas prices being really high and inflation, and I was just the one kind of being a little salty behind the scenes and thought there is no way we're hitting 275. Neighborhood's generous, but geez, let's just be realistic here. You guys just continue to blow my mind. So the goal, 275, here's what y'all did. Yeah, so, wow, I know, you guys are incredible. Honestly, every time I think there's just no way, you guys don't just meet that. You just are so generous and so incredible, and it's just amazing what we can do when we all come together and what we can accomplish. When you all do things like this, the future's bright for Neighborhood, which I think is great because I say this often, but I think the best days of Neighborhood are still in front of us, and that we've sort of been given this opportunity of a lifetime, and I don't want to miss it, and I don't want us to miss it, and you guys really, with Project Christmas, have set us up for, I think, a really fun 2022, give us a little bit of financial wiggle room to just be creative and innovative in terms of what we can do and want to do and things like that. And so, from the bottom of my heart, just thank you for being on the journey with us and believing in the mission here. It's, couldn't do it without you, so thank you. But that leads to the second thing, in terms of just church family business I wanted to talk about. I want to invite you, some of you have already signed up, but this week, we're hosting 3 vision nights, so you don't have to come to all 3, just come to one. They're all the same. It's 1 hour. We're providing childcare and dessert, and this is just an opportunity just to kind of sit in a smaller gathering and just talk about the future of Neighborhood and what we're so excited about for 2022, and an opportunity for you to ask me any question you want, and I may dodge your question, but you can still ask it, so it'll be, I think, a great opportunity. And we'd love to have you come and be a part of that. And it's really easy to sign up. You can actually just go to our website, ncvisalia.com. A little kind of RSVP thing will pop up. You can sign up on the app, or you can go in person after the service out on our patio. To my left is the Next Lounge, and you can sign up there. But this is me, lead pastor, Neighborhood Church, personally inviting you to come and hang out for dessert with me this week and just talk the future of Neighborhood and kind of celebrate what God did in 2021 through all of you guys. So, I think that's what I wanted to say. But here's how I think both of those things sort of tie into what we want to talk about. Is anybody else really warm? I'm sorry. It's like hot in here, and I'm a little grumpy about it. So, and I say that because there's someone on staff responsible for that, and I want him to know I'm mad personally at him for how I'm feeling right now. So, his name's Kelly, by the way. So, okay, so here's the thing. I'm up here and we're like celebrating, well, look at all that money. You guys are so generous, and come to Vision Night. We're going to talk about it. But here's the deal. None of what we want to do is for sure going to happen. None of it's kind of foregone conclusion, right? Because there's one thing that can absolutely derail a church, can create chaos in a family, can just unhinge, individual relationships. There's one thing, and that'll make sure that all of our best laid plans stay just that, plans. And here's the one thing. It's our inability to repair broken relationships. If we can't or won't learn to navigate conflict, if we can't or won't learn to forgive, if we can't or won't heal relational wounds, then our best laid plans as a local church, as a family, as individuals just interacting with each other, we will never be what we could have been. Our plans will never become reality. And that's why we wanted to start 2022 just having a conversation, right? And talking about how do we fix what's broken in regards to our relationships. We wanted to spend a few weeks talking about emotional intelligence or relational intelligence. And really, if you're new to Neighborhood, we call ourselves a Jesus church, and so we're going to look at all of this from a Jesus perspective. And one of the reasons that we want to look at everything from a Jesus perspective is because we already know how to navigate relationships from our perspective. You've already been doing it. You already know the damage you're capable of when it comes to your interpersonal relationships or the relationships in your family. And I'll tell you why I use the word damage, because for most of us, when it comes to strategies in regards to navigating conflict, we have one of them, and it's this. Well, if they would just see things my way, we'd be good, right? If they would just get on my page, then we wouldn't be having this fight. Think about your current sort of fractured relationships, sort of disconnected relationships. Could be with your family or spouse or work or just good friends. Right, there's been this weird thing, or now it's just become this weird, awkward thing, and you can tell you've been drifting apart for some time. And isn't it just true in all of those relationships? If they would just see it your way, everything would be okay. After all, what's wrong with those people, right? If we were to take our most current relationship strategies and title our teaching series after our strategy, here's maybe what we could call it. How to get people to see things our way, which is, of course, the right way, right? That's generally how we approach relationships, because until they see things our way, which is the right way, they're holding up progress, right? They're just making it awkward for our family. Nobody can move forward, right? This family's in turmoil. This work environment's in turmoil, right? They've already ruined 1 or 2 or 3 Thanksgivings or Christmases, right? Just forget it. These people are too much. Here's the thing, and I think you know that I'm being a little sarcastic, right? It's probably not always their fault, or at least all their fault. I think relationships are like cars. Maybe you've heard this metaphor before. Like, we're way better at starting and driving them than we are fixing them, right? Just like a car, it's easy to buy one. It's easy to drive one. But if something happens to them, they break. When they break, we don't know what to do. And a lot of times we'll just turn up the music so we don't hear the clank. Right? Well, if that's your strategy in a relationship, it's only a matter of time before that relationship's going to end. Here's what I think comes natural, just intuitive to us. I think intuitively we do one of 4 things pretty naturally. Conflict happens, and then here's what we do. We try to convince them they're wrong and we're right. We try to coerce them into being convinced that they're wrong and we're right. We try to we make them feel bad about how they're thinking. We gaslight them, right? So that they understand how right we are. Or we just try to control them, right? We just try to force them into doing things our way or seeing things from our perspective. And if you've ever been on the side of trying to be convinced, coerced, convicted, or controlled, how'd that go? How'd that make you feel? right? This strategy's been called the C4 strategy because it works a lot like C4, the explosive. It just blows things up, right? These 4 strategies, which are, I think, somewhat intuitive for most of us in terms of how we navigate conflict, they turn conflict, which we need to hear this, is a normal part of human relationship. If you are one of those people that says things like, well, love just shouldn't be this hard, you are naive to the fact that relationship and loving people is incredibly complex and difficult and takes a ton of work. Conflict is a normal part of any relationship, be it marriage, family, friend, coworker, whatever. But what we're good at is taking what's normal, conflict, that's just part of it, and then we drop C4 into the middle of it, and we turn it into combat. And there are always casualties in war. And once we've tried, and it didn't work, to convince, coerce, convict, and control, once we've tried that and it didn't work, here's what we say. I mean, this is how we sort of spin the narrative. We say things like, well, the relationship's just too far gone. Or that person is too far gone. Or it's just too awkward to move forward now. And we leave yet another broken relationship in our wake. Sometimes people will come and talk to me, and as they're, I don't know that they're doing this on purpose, but they're sharing their story, and part of their story is just like broken relationship, broken relationship, broken relationship. And finally, I've just gotten older and saltier. I say, well, what's the one common denominator in all of those broken relationships? You, right? You're the problem, I'm thinking, right? And so what we want to do over the next few weeks is just learn different strategies. C4 takes normal conflict, turns it into combat, and we leave casualties on the side of the road. So I want to give you over the next 3 weeks just some, I think, strategies that will be less natural. They won't feel as intuitive as dropping a bomb on our relationships. But I promise you they'll be more effective, and they'll result in healthier relationships and fewer lost connections. So over Christmas break, Katie and I took the girls to see Sing 2. You familiar with this movie? You've seen the ads for it maybe. Obviously, it's the second part of Sing 1. If you're unfamiliar with the Sing movies at all, Sing 1, it centers around, they're animated sort of celebrations of music, if you will. And it centers around a koala bear named Buster Moon, played by Matthew McConaughey. These movies have all-star casts. And he owns a struggling theater, and he decides the way to resurrect his struggling theater is to host a singing competition. And so you get all these great songs, kind of old and young, and this great cast that's singing the songs. And so Sing 2 is just sort of this sort of continuation of the story. They've resurrected the theater, and it's all good, and they're taking the show on the road. And what they've done, what Sing 2 did that made it so much better than Sing 1 is they brought on yet another all-star for the cast. They somehow got Bono to play a lion named Clay Calloway. And so a lot of the songs in the movie are from U2, which is really entertaining, right? If you don't know who U2 is, we pray for you a lot. So it's great. Kitty and I loved it. We're walking back to the car, and we're in the car, and we're talking to the girls, and what we realized is Sing 2 wasn't just entertaining, it actually highlighted for us our failure as parents, because our 9-year-old and our 14-year-old had never heard of Bono or U2. And we just thought, oh, these children are going to be failures in life if we don't figure this out right now. And so it led to this whole discussion about how U2's way better than the Beatles, and that they're bigger than the Beatles, and it's just, it's this really important thing, and that a U2 concert isn't just a concert, it's a cultural moment, right? And we start listening to U2 songs, and one of the songs that popped on is, I'm sure if you don't even really need to know U2 to know that one of their rather well-known songs is called Sunday, Bloody Sunday. We've heard this song before, maybe? You've heard of it, maybe? Well, it's for sure one of U2's most overtly political songs. By the way, U2, if you don't know, they're from Ireland, Northern Ireland, and And so there was a lot going on. And so Sunday Bloody Sunday is a song that sort of depicts the horror of what's become known as the Troubles in Northern Ireland. And I've talked to you a little bit about the Troubles before. It was a 30-year period in Northern Ireland that was marked by hostility and violence between separate political and religious factions. It was political and religious conflict that began with protests and riots and just soon became just outright violence. Over the 30 years, 3,500 people die, half of those just being totally innocent civilians. And the fighting began between two separate political and religious factions. One were the Unionists. They were predominantly Protestant, and they wanted Northern Ireland to stay part of the United Kingdom, the UK, England, all of that. And then they were fighting with the Nationalists, who were mainly Catholic, and they wanted Northern Ireland to join the United Ireland Republic and not have anything to do with the UK. Anyway, one of the most horrific moments of the Troubles was a day they called Bloody Sunday. In fact, we're just a couple of weeks away from the 50th anniversary of Bloody Sunday. It happened in 1972 in the Bogside neighborhood in a town called Derry, where British soldiers shot 26 unarmed civilians during a protest march. 14 people die. I mean, it's really dramatic. Many of the victims were shot in the back as they were running away. Some of the victims were shot while they were tending to the wounded. Other protesters were injured by shrapnel and rubber bullets and batons. 2 of the victims were actually run down by British Army vehicles. I mean, it was like a thing. Bloody Sunday was a really big deal. And Derry, where all of this happened, where Bloody Sunday happened, wasn't just famous for Bloody Sunday. They were also famous for actually kind of starting the Troubles. The Troubles actually began at something called the Battle of Bogside, that same neighborhood where Bloody Sunday happened. It was a 2-day massive riot. Again, it took the military to come in and sort of restore order. And if we go back even farther, Derry, this town, it's actually divided by a river, has had conflict, religious conflict, especially be a part of its history. In the 17th century, Catholics came in, massacred a bunch of Protestants. I mean, it's just this crazy place. And today, you'll find much less violence in Derry, but the city is still quite divided. Part of the population, they can't even agree on the name of the city. Part of the population calls it Londonderry, while the other part of the population just calls it Derry. And again, it's a city divided by a river, and so Protestants live on the East Bank and Catholics live on the West Bank, and they really still don't like to mix. And again, I think U2's song, its lyrics, I mean, I think it speaks to this. Here's from Sunday Bloody Sunday. And the battle's just begun. There's many lost, but tell me who's won? The trenches dug within our hearts, mothers, children, brothers, sisters, torn apart. I mean, it's an apt description, I think, of what's happened in Northern Ireland. And not just Northern Ireland, right? It happens every day, I think, in our churches, in our families, and in between just 2 people. There's a war that's taking place. And it's dividing us, it's separating us, it's disconnecting us, and we're feeling like there's something in between us. And we don't know how to kind of cross over to the other side to regain that connection. In Derry, it's pretty cool. There's many fighting for reconciliation and to connect the 2 sides and to heal the really multiple century history of wounds. And so in 2010, they actually built a bridge across the river, not for cars, but for pedestrians and cyclists and joggers. And they actually call it the Peace Bridge. I think we have a picture. There it is. And they call it the Peace Bridge because that's what they're trying to do. They're just trying to build a bridge, build peace between the 2 sides and to reconcile broken relationships. And I just love the image of a bridge is creating this safe relational space and this relational peace. Because while a physical bridge is something that crosses a vast gulf that can separate people sort of geographically from one another, you and I know and have experienced the pain that comes when there's a gulf between people that is not necessarily geographic. It's a relational gap. And this series, I hope what we'll do is give you the tools to not build a physical bridge, but to build a relational, or maybe we'll even call it a spiritual bridge back to the people you've lost. That's the goal of the series, to just give you those kinds of tools. We already know how to blow the bridge up. We already know how to create divide between us. We convince, we coerce, we convict, we control, and we leave bodies all over the place. We leave lost relationships everywhere we go. And so this series, really, I hope for you, it will feel like looking at how to build relationship bridges back to the people you've lost. So let me just show you, I think, how Jesus summarizes his relationship bridge building process. And so it's just really quick. It's really practical, actually. Here's what Jesus gets recorded saying. Jesus said to his disciples, his followers, apprentices, students, there's kind of all ways we could talk about that. So Jesus said to his disciples, things that cause people to stumble are bound to come. So this is great. Jesus is saying we all hurt people. He's just being honest about it. If you're in a relationship, it's only a matter of time before you mess it up. It's only a matter of time before you say the wrong thing, do the wrong thing, drop the ball, blow it, right? I mean, after all, to err is human. Jesus is just starting by getting real about the human condition. You and I, we are going to hurt the people in our lives. But just because it's going to happen doesn't mean you should be fine with it. You're not off the hook when you hurt somebody. So he adds this. But woe to anyone through whom they come. As in, don't do that. At least try not to do that. It would be better for them to be thrown into the sea with a millstone tied around their neck. Now that seems really dramatic, and Jesus is being dramatic here. But it's also to be thrown into the sea with a millstone tied around their neck. That's pretty common language and common kind of way to talk about things in Jesus' day. So it would be better for them to be thrown into the sea with a millstone tied around their neck than to cause one of these little ones to stumble. Now, I think we hear little ones and we think children, and you think, oh, well, I haven't done that to kids, I'm good. The problem is Jesus is not talking about children here. Little ones would be an inappropriate way to sort of interpret that. That's not what he's saying. Little ones in this context is talking about either other followers of Jesus or, and what I think probably is more likely, are the people that are sort of social and religious outcasts that Jesus is welcoming, but the religious leaders within Judaism in the first century have rejected. And Jesus is just saying, woe to you for that kind of behavior. Woe to you for blowing the bridge up between people and yourself and people and their God. So Jesus adds, so watch yourself. Pay close attention to how you behave in relationship. And then finally, Jesus throws this out there, and I wish he would have never said this because it just seems, well, I disagree strongly with Jesus here. Here's what he says. If your brother or sister sins against you, rebuke them. So let them know they hurt your feelings. So don't think rebuke and think like, well, now I get to tell them. Just stop with that. This is just Jesus saying, let them know they hurt you. And if they repent, here it is. Here's the part I wish Jesus would have never said. Forgive them even if they sin against you 7 times in a day and 7 times come back to you saying, I repent, you must forgive them. Well, Jesus. Maybe 6, but 7? That seems a little aggressive. Here's my summary of what Jesus is saying and what we just read. We all hurt people, but that doesn't make it okay. Be careful to do it as little as possible. If and when people hurt you, talk to them about it. Hey, can we grab coffee? Hey, that wasn't okay. Hey, you hurt my feelings when you said or did that. Why we or so many people are even incapable of that conversation, I don't know, but we are. So if and when people hurt you, talk to them about it. If they're sorry, forgive them. Don't break off the relationship or hold it over their head. Like, come on. This is just being a 9-year-old. Fight to keep your relationships alive and well. I think essentially that's what Jesus is saying. So the $1 million question, right, then is, well, how do we pull it off? I mean, how do we do it? I mean, after all, if there was ever an easier said than done scenario, it would be fixing broken relationships. I mean, how do we pull off what Jesus just summarized? And so that's what I want to talk about over the next couple of weeks. Just, again, practical handles, steps you can take, tools you can use to build a relational bridge back towards those you're in conflict with. But before I dive in, I'm just going to give you one tool today, and next week another tool, and the following week we'll give you the third tool. But before we give you the tool, there are a couple of disclaimers, sort of side notes that are just really, really important. The first is this: forgiveness and reconciliation are not the same thing. Here's what forgiveness is. It's my personal act to release the one who sinned against me from my personal right to collect on the moral debt or to pay them back for their offense. That's forgiveness, right? Instead of them giving them back the pain they caused me, I'm actually now going to forgive them, and I'm going to absorb the pain into myself with God's help and the help of my community, the people closest to me. So that's forgiveness, but reconciliation is totally different. Reconciliation is when you put broken relationships back together again. Now here's the key difference. Forgiveness takes one, you. You can forgive. I can forgive, even if the person who hurt you isn't sorry. Won't apologize, won't even admit they did anything wrong, won't change their behavior, whatever, you can still forgive. And you should forgive, because forgiveness takes only one person. Reconciliation is dramatically different because it takes two people, both people. And this is why it's so important. If you're a follower of Jesus, so if you're here and you're like, I'm a Jesus person, I'm a Bible person, church person, that's who I am, you're on the hook for forgiveness. Like, that's commanded. Like, you forgive. You need to do that. Reconciliation, however, is not a command. It's an ideal. We should fight for reconciliation. If at all possible, work to mend the divide between yourself and the person you're in conflict with. But it's not commanded because it takes another person. You and the person you're in conflict with need to be on the same page. But we work for it, we fight for it. Jesus people, last week Jordan told us that we've actually been, if you're a Jesus person, you've been given the ministry, the work of reconciliation. It's our job as Jesus people to work to put broken relationships back together. That's our job, fix broken things. However, this is so important. So forgiveness and reconciliation, very different. Forgiveness, one person, you're on the hook for it if you're a Jesus person. Reconciliation is the ideal. We fight for it. We work towards it. But it's not commanded because it takes two. The other person has to be on the same page. And here's number two, side note, so important. Jesus is not asking you to be a doormat. Reconciliation is not a command because the other person and what they're going to do and their decisions are at play. Jesus is not asking you to let people walk all over you. In fact, we've already learned you're commanded to let the person know they're hurting you. Remember the passage, if your brother or sister sins against you, rebuke them. Let them know they hurt you, right? Hey, what you said, what you did, it hurt, it triggered something. Whatever, however you want to say that. But the reality is, and this is, some of you need to hear this, the reality is there are some people who are so unhealthy, they are so toxic, they are so hell-bent on your emotional or physical pain that at some point you have to release the relationship. You just have to let it go to protect your mind, your body, your soul. Now, most of us are way too quick to do that. Some of you are way too slow to do that. The reality is, somewhere in the messy in-between there is a healthy balance. There's a time and a place to release the relationship because forgiveness takes one, but reconciliation takes two. Does that make sense? Yeah, we're good? That's important, I think, when we're talking about building bridges, because sometimes we need to walk away, especially if you're in a situation where you're being hurt. Okay, with all that said, let me just give you the first tool today, and then we'll get out of here. So the first tool in your relationship bridge building kit, you're going to love this one because it's all about you. Look in the mirror. Look in the mirror. Now, I wanted to talk about this tool first because the excuse I hear the most when somebody comes into my office and they've got some massive problem in their life, here's how the story goes. Here's my massive problem, Forrest, and here's my disclaimer. It's not my fault. It's not my fault. Well, of course there's conflict, but you need to know, Forrest, it's not my fault. And ultimately, for many of us, that's just sort of our default. Our internal narrative almost always ends with, it's not my fault. When you're telling the story, well, hey, why don't you call your mom? Why aren't you and your dad? What about your brother? What about that guy you worked with? I mean, you guys were so close. What happened there, right? I mean, how you rehearse the story, either externally with other people or your own internal dialogue, the moral of the story often lands on, and it's not my fault, it's their fault. And here's the thing, it may in fact be true that it is their fault, but that's honestly beside the point, so get over it, right? It may be their fault, but reconnection, working towards reconciliation, building relational bridges back towards another, it always begins with us, regardless of who started all the fuss. And if you're a Christian, Jesus person, listen, honestly, no excuse here. I mean, just the foundation of Christianity says this. I mean, here's like Christianity 101. If you're new to Christianity, here's what Christians believe. That God made the first move towards us. That there was a disconnect between us and God, and Jesus made the first move to close the gap, to build the bridge. That Jesus died for us. That God so loved the world that he moved in our direction. Not to get back at us like Zeus and lightning bolts and all of that, no. But to get back to us. And then he turns around and invites us to do the same thing for other people, right? Go do for others what Jesus already did for you. He came towards you to say, I want us to have relationship. Now go do that for the people in your world where there's broken relationships. And to make sure we did do this, Jesus, I don't know if you've ever found Jesus super annoying, but he is. And to ensure that we are not the kind of people that just kind of fold our arms and say, ball's in your court. I'm ready when you're ready. I mean, some of you have said that. You should not say that anymore, right? Because that's crazy, especially if you're a Christian. You're not allowed to do that, right? I mean, I guess you can do it, but you shouldn't, right? Because that's not how bridges get built. Nope. Your move, right? Come on. And to ensure we didn't become those kinds of people, Jesus asked a question that is so annoying. And honestly, if you're here and you're not a Bible person, you've probably even heard this question, just didn't know it came from Jesus. Here's what Jesus said. Here's the question. Why do you look at the speck of sawdust in your brother's eye and pay no attention to the plank in your own eye? What? Jesus, you could have kept that to yourself. I mean, do I need to unpack this metaphor? I mean, it's sort of saying everything it needs to say. I mean, why are you paying such attention to that little thing that they did or said or whatever when you've got this 2x4 coming out? I mean, what are you doing? Why are you paying attention to the thing you have no control over anyway and ignoring the thing you do have control over, the plank in your eye? Right? Jesus is saying, listen, there's two groups of people. There's you and there's everybody else. Why don't you worry about the thing you have a little bit of control over, you, and not the group of people, which is everybody else on planet Earth, that you have no control over, right? Why are you paying so much attention to a part of the problem you can't control, that you have no say in, really, right? And don't we all have the same answer to Jesus's just absurd question? I mean, here's my answer to Jesus. Well, to begin with, Jesus, that's not a speck of sawdust in their eye. You're dead wrong. That thing in their eye, you're saying, oh, it's just little itty bitty. It's not little itty bitty, Jesus. That thing's massive. You say, I have a plank. They got a giant sequoia. Right? I mean, he left. She didn't follow through. They fired me for no good reason. They ruined Christmas. They're not getting invited back. Now, Jesus, I mean, come on. This is what Christians do anyway. I mean, I'm not saying I'm perfect. But Jesus, come on, you calling that a little itty bitty speck? From where I'm standing, that's not little itty bitty, right? That's a big deal, and they won't accept responsibility. They won't follow through, so don't get on me about little speck. And Jesus, also, I think you've got it confused. I don't have a plank in my eye. In fact, again, other way around. Right? They're the one with the plank. Again, I'm not saying I'm perfect, but I'm definitely the one with the speck in this situation, not the plank. Maybe it's just me that talks to Jesus like that. But after your rant, here's what Jesus follows up with, which is even worse. How do you say to your brother, let me take the speck out of your eye when all the time there's a plank in your own eye? So this is Jesus sort of doubling down and saying, how is it you've come to a place in your life when you think you have supernatural clarity into the whole situation and that you've got the answer that they need? How could you possibly even be so arrogant to say that, right? You really think, right? Hey, if you could just sit down and allow me to fix you, right? I mean, you're broken, you're insecure, you're emotionally immature. So if you would just sit down, listen to me, keep an open mind to what I have to say to you, and just allow me to fix you, we'd be good. Jesus, in this second question, sort of doubling down, is saying, how could you possibly get to the place where you think you have space to do that to someone else? This is Jesus saying to us, give me a break. And then he wraps it up with, it just gets worse. You hypocrite. You actor, you're pretender. That's kind of what the word hypocrite in Jesus' day would have meant. More like you're an actor on a stage, you're a pretender. You hypocrite, first take the plank out of your own eye, then you will see clearly to remove the speck from your brother's eye. So it's not saying maybe you never have anything good to say to someone else, but before you do, worry about you, right, is what Jesus is saying. Before you try to fix them or even talk to other people, just get things in the right order. Look in the mirror first. And granted, we get it, understand. Jesus, I think, understands like why things are out of order. What they did was horrible. What they did was disruptive. And they did it over and over and over again, and they're not accepting responsibility. Whatever, we get it. But Jesus says, yes, I get it. But before we get to them, start with you. Look in the mirror. Jesus saying, check yourself. Remove anything that's going to prevent you from seeing clearly. And usually in relational conflict, there's a lot. Anger, bitterness, hurt, resentment, crazy justifying behavior, right? And just so you know, this is now just kind of science. If you carry all of that with you, you're shutting down the part of your brain that processes information rationally. So everything you're about to say to someone else, if you've got some of that stuff, anger and bitterness and hurt and resentment and justification and all of that, whatever you're about to say is going to make no sense. Because you can't make any sense in that moment. We can't think rationally when we're flooded with all of that kind of stuff. So deal with your garbage. Deal with your plank. Don't walk into conflict blind. That's the mistake so many of us make. We walk in blind because we've got all this anger and frustration, all the bitterness and all of that. So we walk in blind, and then we're doing kind of default, and we drop the C4, right? Coercion, conviction, control, right? All that. We just drop it right on the relationship, and we blow it up, and we leave another broken relationship in the dust. Look back at all of your relationships that are broken and lost. It's probably going to have a little bit of that in it. So deal with your plank first, Jesus says. Now again, don't email me. Jesus said this, not me. I'm not like, you're all perfect in my eye. Yeah, no, you're not. But it's... So here's what I want to do. I'll wrap up with this. I just want to give you a prayer. We could talk forever about, sort of all kinds of relationship strategies and ways to look in the mirror and self-assessment and, getting clarity and probably lots. Honestly, we always try to highlight mental health here. Go to therapy if you need to go to therapy. Do all the things you need to do. But today, I also want to give you a prayer that I think will help you start to look in the mirror and deal with your stuff before you feel like you have any place to sit them down and fix them. Here's the prayer. Jesus, show me where I was at fault and how I could have responded in a way that looks more like love. Amen. Any version of that would be fine. It's just kind of what I was typing up. Jesus, show me where I was at fault and how I could have responded in a way that looks, I would probably add, looks more like love. Jesus, change me. Show me my plank. It's not Jesus, change him. Jesus, change her. Jesus, change them. Jesus, change it. It's not any of that. It's Jesus, change me. Where was I at fault? What could I have done? Where was I not seeing clearly? Where was I angry and bitter? Where was I trying to, reverse the order and fix them before I fix me? Where was I doing that? And so my question as we get out here is just, would you just be willing to pray a prayer like that? And not just pray the prayer as you're walking out today and then be like, well, I didn't really hear from Jesus, so I'm not at fault. So can I fix you now? Don't do that. Sit down and spend some days with this, thinking about it, praying it, listening to Jesus, talking to people that are close to you about it. Work this out. So would you be willing to pray a prayer like that? Would you be willing to take a first step towards reconciliation, towards building a relational bridge by looking in the mirror? Okay, I'm going to leave it at that, because next week we've got tool number 2 for building our relational bridge. So I hope you come back, because we'll talk about that. I'll be here up here next week and the week following to kind of wrap up our series. So I hope you'll join me and we'll talk about it. We good? Yeah, I know that's kind of a lot. It was a lot writing it, I'll be honest. I don't like writing things that apply to my life too. I'd rather just tell you how you're screwed up. This week was not one of those weeks, so I'm glad we're moving on. So, hey, before we go, a couple of things. If you're a guest with us and you thought, well, the pastor spent 30 minutes telling me how I'm the problem and not them, so maybe you don't want to come back, and that's fine, I respect it. But if you do want to come back, right outside, next lounge, on the patio to my left, we have a box for you. We call it Discover and See box. We have some cool, fun things in there that are just gifts, and everything you could possibly need to know or want to know about neighborhood in there as well. What else? Oh, don't forget Vision Nights. Love it, love it, love it, love it. If you signed up and came and hung out with me for an hour. And, we talked about generosity. If you really want to be a part of sort of growing in your generosity, we don't pass the little basket around anymore. We have the boxes on the wall, and that would be awesome if you joined us that way in our mission. And also, if you just need someone to pray for you, maybe you have this relational gap between you and somebody else and you'd love to close it, the prayer team will be, I'm not sure where, on either side of me or both sides, but somebody will be up here and would love to pray for you. And I think that's all they asked me to say. So can I pray for you? And then we'll get out of here. Jesus, thanks so much for today and for Neighborhood Church, and and for the way, the wisdom, I think, that you give us in regards to how to build a bridge back towards the people we've lost connection with. And help us, Jesus, not to be the kinds of people that cross our arms and say, it's your turn, it's your move. I'm ready when you're ready. They could call me. Help us not to be those kind of people, but help us to be people who, like you, made the first move and started building the bridge. So help us get over our pride, our embarrassment, our awkwardness, and make the phone call, grab the coffee, and find a way back. Jesus, we love you, and it's in your name we pray. Amen. Thanks, Second Service. We'll see you next week.